My guest this morning is the director and producer of the film 3 Mile Limit, which you might have seen premiered on Thursday. 3 Mile Limit is a very New Zealand story based on the beginnings of Radio Hauraki in the 1960s on a boat called the Tiri. It's Craig Newland's directional debut film, and already it's won official selection into 7 international film festivals in the US for Best Feature Film. Not since Whale Rider have so many film festivals shown such strong interest in New Zealand independent film. Director Craig Newland joins me now. Good morning, Craig.
G'day, Jack. How are you?
Thank you. Great, thanks. And thank you so much for being with us on what I know is a very busy week. I saw the film just the other day, really enjoyed it. How was the debut?
Well, the premiere was absolutely amazing. We had over 2,000 people on Friday night to turn up for what was just a spectacular turnout, and to have it at the Civic, I mean, I couldn't think of a better place to feature the film.
It must be such a buzz, but one where you still kind of have, mixed feelings going into it. I bet there was a squirmy feeling in your stomach when you have that many people turning up to see your film, particularly when it's your directional debut.
Yeah, I guess because we tested the film 3 times, we kind of knew that we had the tone of the film right. What I was really looking forward to was that this was a non-test screening audience. This was the first public outing, so it was, in fact, we were just talking about it just before around the breakfast table, and it was really listening to those key moments in the room, and it was great to hear that magnified through a 2,000 plus audience. So yeah, it was really awesome.
So tell me about your relationship with the story, because it's a story I think so many, if not most, New Zealanders are at least familiar with in some way, and it's a wonderful New Zealand story in many respects of turfing your fingers to the authorities. So where were you back 40 years ago when all this was happening?
It's not my era. I mean, I'm a different generation, but I guess for me, I got involved in broadcasting at the age of 17, so I actually come from a radio background, and I knew the story really well. It was folklore if you were part of the broadcasting landscape, and these guys were icons. So when I was looking for something to produce, it came to me one day, I've mentioned this in a couple of other interviews, driving down the southern motorway, listening to Radio Hauraki and hearing the announcer say, "You're listening to the home of the Morning Pirates." And it was really that was the moment where I thought, that's really the story I want to tell. And that was the beginning of the journey for me.
It's funny, I remember as a kid, going along in the car after school with Dad, and Dad would be turning up Hauraki as Led Zeppelin blasted over the airwaves, and him explaining the story to me. And it is a story. I mean, it is not only is it an iconic New Zealand story, but it's a story that lends itself to film, I would have thought.
Absolutely, and I was really amazed that the film hadn't been made at that point, although it wasn't through the lack of people trying, because as I spoke to David Gates for the very first time, his reaction to me with my wanting to do an interview was not another bloody interview, and he told me that people had been trying to make the film for the last 25 years. So I was able to squeeze some time out of him and sit down and talk to him about what happened, and actually David has right through this whole process has been quite in a way a collaborator, because he was the first person that we gave the script to read. I was very interested in his reaction, and that was all positive. So yeah, it was great having him alongside me because he's been there over the last 12 years in the background.
Why you say that there were problems in the past with people wanting to make the film? Did you encounter difficulties? I mean, I know in terms of funding and production, this is an independent film.
Exactly, yes. This is not a New Zealand Film Commission funded film. I think possibly the reason why it is a difficult film to make is that it's such a big story. There are so many events that took place, so many characters, and how do you condense that down into a narrative that is reasonably pacey? You don't want any moments to drag, and that was the difficulty even in the edit room for Jono and myself. was to find a way to make the rhythm and the pacing of the film. So it sits at 105 minutes, and I think one of the great aspects of when we did the premiere the other night was people were saying that, you know, the film just went by pretty quickly for them and they never got bored. So, yeah, that was pleasing.
Well, so you were talking to David, you gave him a script when you first got that done. How true did you stay to the original story?
Obviously, you can't tell the entire story because it's too big, so we had to abbreviate some of the moments. But the key was to make sure that you had the heart of the film, and that was probably the most difficult challenge, was just identifying what those key moments, those key beats were, and give people an experience. And the other thing that's come through really clearly from the younger audience is that they just weren't aware that this actually happened in the 60s. In fact, they find that it's, you know, if it wasn't true, it's hard to believe.
Yeah. Well, I one of the things, I watched the film with my American girlfriend, and you might be interested to know, I mean, she, not having much of a connection to Radio Hauraki or to the Hauraki Golf or to the pirate story in general, she loved the film. She was totally enthralled the entire time, which was interesting because it's a New Zealand story, and I think through the success you've had so far in your film being accepted in so many international festivals, it's a New Zealand story that actually translates really well globally.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about that because several years ago, I was able to attract Ed Pressman to co-produce the film with me, and Ed has done over 75 movies. And the reason that he was coming on board was that he saw that it had international legs. Ed's done films like Wall Street with Michael Douglas, and this was going to be his first foray into an Australasian film. So I knew from that perspective that we certainly had international legs, and the count now is we're actually up to 9 international film festivals that have selected us, and we won the Fargo International Film Festival for Best Feature just prior to Christmas. So it's great that Americans are embracing the film, and like your girlfriend, seem to have no problems at all connecting with the material.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your success so far. I know 3 Mile Limit, I think, is out in cinemas March 6th, isn't it?
March 6th, Jack, and we certainly hope that people get in and see it in that opening weekend.
I think it's one for everyone. Those who can remember Radio Hauraki's beginnings, and those of us who've learnt the story since. It's certainly a great story, and I really enjoyed the film. So thanks, Craig.
Thank you very much, Jack. Cheers.
Go on here. Craig Newland there, the director and producer of 3 Mile Limit. And at the premiere just the other night, Ian Magan, one of the original pirates, was sitting enjoying things. Morning, Ian.
G'day, Jack. How are you?
Hey, I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. What did you think?
Good film. Good entertaining story, and certainly captured the spirit of the time.
Craig was saying to us, it's one of those things. Unless you're directing The Hobbit, you can't break it up into 3 separate movies. It's one of those things you can't fit every element of the story into an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes.
Craig's quite right. You cannot compress the adventure and excitement and tension of that 3.5 years into an hour and a half. It's very, very difficult. And the film showed the key elements of what we had to go through in many ways.
It just seems like it would have been so much fun. Is that how you recall those days? Or is it one of those things that, history has kind of tarnished things with a good brush, and that in reality, bobbing out in the Hauraki for months at a time got a little bit grim from time to time?
Well, it was both those things. Most of us joined with this high sense of adventure. We're in our very early 20s. Some of us were under 20. Ross Goodwin was, I think, 18. Peter Telling, people like them were 18, 19 when they joined. So, it was a reckless sense of adventure, had a bit to do with it. The common element was we all felt the need to change the role of broadcasting in the community. In those days, it meant that let's get some modern music on the radio 24 hours a day.
I know too, of course, in the movie we'll remind a lot of people of Rick Grant's tragic death just before they returned to sea. Does that still weigh on the guys' minds?
Oh, yeah.
You think about that a lot?
Yeah, to this very day. Yeah. It's there's a certain irony in the whole thing where you go through 3.5 years of deprivation of all sorts, and you get to achieve your goal with the blessing of the government that was previously against you, and with the blessing of your public and everybody else connected with you. And then on the final night, having had a very emotional final celebration on board the ship with the residents of Great Barrier Island, to be sailing back and to have to lose the life of your best disc jockey, was just terrible. But not only that, he was a great friend. He was a lovely guy, and I had him taped as being our star disc jockey for the future.
Yeah,
it was just. We lost one of our best friends that night, and you never forget that.
It's a great story. It's a remarkable thing you achieved, and it must be a wonderful thing to reflect upon with the film's release and with the anniversary this year. But Ian, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack.
The release of 3 Mile Limit, like I say, is I think scheduled for March 6th in New Zealand cinemas. Craig there, the director, saying that it's been accepted into 9 international film festivals now, which is certainly an achievement in itself.